The entire conference room fell silent. The screen still displayed the new design I'd spent half a year perfecting, but his words hit like a slap across my face. Take your stupid opinion elsewhere. I smiled. All right then. He had no idea I would do exactly that, and in the process, I'd bring his entire career crashing down around him. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's watching them realize they handed you the weapon themselves. My name is Emily Carter, and I've spent 7 years building my reputation as product design director at Northwind Innovations. That Tuesday morning in March, I walked into our Chicago headquarters main conference room with the confidence of someone who'd earned her seat at the table. The presentation I was about to deliver represented 6 months of user research, countless iterations, and feedback from over 3,000 customers. Our flagship software platform desperately needed this overhaul, and I had the solution. The executive team was already assembled around the polished oak table. I'd presented to this group dozens of times before, but today felt different. There was a new face at the head of the table, Gregory Mason, our recently appointed vice president of product. He'd joined Northwind just 4 weeks earlier, brought in from a failed Miami startup that had burned through $30 million in venture capital without shipping a single viable product. But somehow, he'd convinced our CEO that his disruptive vision was exactly what we needed. I began my presentation, walking through the pain points our enterprise clients face daily. The data was irrefutable. Customer satisfaction scores had dropped 18% over the past year, and our biggest competitors were gaining ground. My redesign addressed every major complaint while maintaining the core functionality our users depended on. As you can see from these heat maps, I explained, clicking to the next slide, users spend an average of 47 seconds trying to locate basic functions in our current interface. My proposal reduces that to under 10 seconds. Hold on, Greg interrupted, not even looking up from his phone. This whole thing seems unnecessarily complex. Why don't we just slap an AI chatbot on there and call it a day? The room tensed. Sarah Martinez, our chief technology officer, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She'd been my advocate since day one, but even she seemed hesitant to speak up against the new VP. With respect, Greg, I continued, keeping my voice steady. Our research shows that while AI integration has its place, our enterprise clients specifically requested maintaining direct control over their workflows. They don't want research? He finally looked up, a condescending smirk playing at his lips. You mean those surveys you send out? Real innovation doesn't come from asking users what they want. Henry Ford said if he'd asked people what they wanted, they'd have said faster horses. My jaw clenched, but I maintained my composure. Actually, there's no evidence Ford ever said that. But more importantly, we're not talking about revolutionary innovation here. We're talking about fixing fundamental usability issues that are causing us to hemorrhage clients. Greg stood up, his 6'3" frame meant to intimidate. He walked around the table, stopping directly in front of my presentation screen, blocking it from view. You know what your problem is? You're stuck in the past. This whole user-centered design thing is dead. The future is AI-driven everything. And if you can't see that, maybe you should take your stupid opinion elsewhere. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I could feel every eye in the room on me, waiting to see if I'd crumble. Monica Walsh from HR looked like she wanted to intervene, but didn't dare. Even Sarah remained silent, her eyes fixed on her notepad. I closed my laptop with deliberate calm, tucked it under my arm, and smiled. Not the warm smile I usually wore in these meetings, but something sharper, more dangerous. You know what, Greg? I think I'll do exactly that. Good, he shot back, clearly pleased with himself. Maybe we can finally get some real work done around here without all this touchy-feely user experience nonsense. As I walked toward the door, I paused, my hand on the handle. Just one thing, Greg. You might want to check who owns the intellectual property rights to this design. I developed it entirely on my own time, using my personal software licenses. My employment contract is quite specific about that. His smirk faltered for just a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. We'll see about that, he said, trying to recover his bravado. "Yes," I replied, opening the door. "We certainly will." As I walked back to my office, my heels clicking against the marble floor, my mind was already working through the possibilities. Greg Mason had just made a critical error. He'd assumed that because he had the title and the CEO's ear, he had all the power. But he'd forgotten one crucial thing in the tech world. Talent and relationships trump titles every time. And I had 7 years worth of both. Back in my office, I sank into my chair and stared at the framed photo on my desk. My team and I celebrating the launch of our first major platform update 3 years ago. David Romero, our former VP of Product, had his arm around my shoulder. Both of us grinning like idiots because we'd just landed Brightline Logistics as a client. That deal had transformed Northwind from a promising startup into a serious enterprise player. I remembered my first day at Northwind 7 years ago. The entire company fit into one floor of a modest building in River North. There were maybe 30 of us total, and everyone wore multiple hats. I was hired as a senior designer, but within a month, I was leading client presentations, conducting user interviews, and even helping with customer support tickets. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. David had been different from most tech executives I'd encountered. He actually listened. During my first design review, I'd nervously presented a complete overhaul of our onboarding flow. Instead of dismissing it as too ambitious, he'd asked thoughtful questions, challenged my assumptions constructively, and then gave me the resources to test it with real users. When the new flow increased conversion rates by 35%, he made sure everyone knew it was my work. Under David's leadership, I built the design team from scratch. First came Marcus, a brilliant UX researcher I'd poached from Microsoft. Then Zoe, fresh out of RUC but with an intuitive understanding of enterprise software that veterans twice her age lacked. By year 3, I was managing a team of 10, and we'd established design standards that became the backbone of every Northwind product. We weren't just colleagues, we were a family. Friday afternoon design critiques turned into evening drinks at the bar across the street. We celebrated each other's wins and supported each other through failures. When Marcus's daughter was diagnosed with leukemia, the entire team rallied, covering his projects so he could be at the hospital. When Zoe's visa was in jeopardy, I personally called our immigration lawyer and made sure she could stay. Everything changed 6 months ago when David announced his retirement. The board brought in Gregory Mason with promises of fresh perspective and aggressive growth. His first all-hands meeting should have been a warning. He spent 40 minutes talking about his vision for AI-first everything without once mentioning our existing products or customers. When someone from engineering asked about maintaining our current platform, Greg dismissed it as legacy thinking. Within his first month, Greg restructured everything. The collaborative pods we'd carefully built were dissolved in favor of strict hierarchical reporting. Our 2-week sprint cycles were replaced with what he called rapid innovation bursts, which basically meant constant pivoting without time for proper testing. The user research budget I'd fought 3 years to establish slashed by 70% because real innovators trust their instincts. But the worst part was the people he brought in. Ethan Blake, his former CTO from the failed Miami startup, was suddenly our new Senior Director of Product Innovation, a title that didn't exist before and seemed designed solely to undermine my authority. Ethan had never worked on enterprise software, had no understanding of our client base, and his main qualification seemed to be his ability to pepper every sentence with buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift. I watched Greg systematically dismantle everything we'd built. The open door policy became scheduled office hours. The flexible work-from-home arrangements that helped us retain top talent were replaced with mandatory in-office days. The diverse hiring initiatives I'd championed were quietly shelved in favor of recruiting from Greg's network, which seemed to consist entirely of white men from failed startups who talked a big game but had never shipped successful products. My team started coming to me with concerns. Zoe was being excluded from design reviews for projects she'd initiated. Marcus was told his research methods were outdated by someone who couldn't even explain what ethnographic research meant. Rachel from Customer Success warned me that our biggest clients were getting nervous about the constant changes. I tried to push back diplomatically. I scheduled a one-on-one with Greg, came prepared with data, customer feedback, and retention metrics. He spent the entire meeting scrolling through his phone, occasionally muttering, "Interesting," without looking up. When I finished, he said, "Emily, you need to stop living in the past. This company is moving forward with or without you." The writing was on the wall. Greg wasn't interested in building on Northwind's success. He wanted to tear it down and rebuild it in his own image, and anyone who questioned that vision was an obstacle to be removed. As I sat in my office that Tuesday afternoon, still reeling from the conference room humiliation, I realized something crucial. Greg thought he was pushing me out, but he'd actually just set me free. The non-compete clause in my contract had enough loopholes to drive a truck through, especially since I'd been careful to develop all my recent work on personal time and equipment. David always told me that the best leaders turn obstacles into opportunities. Greg Mason thought he was an obstacle I couldn't overcome. He was about to learn he was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. The isolation started immediately. Wednesday morning, I arrived to find my access revoked from the product roadmap meetings. The calendar invitation had been quietly deleted, as if I'd never been included at all. When I asked Sharon, Greg's executive assistant, about it, she couldn't meet my eyes. "Mr. Mason feels these meetings should be limited to senior strategic leadership," she mumbled, despite the fact that I'd been attending them for 4 years. By Thursday, it got worse. The weekly design review I'd been running since 2019 was suddenly postponed indefinitely. Instead, Ethan Blake sent out a new invitation for what he called an innovation alignment session. Same time slot, same attendees, minus me. Zoe texted me from the meeting. "He's literally presenting your responsive grid system as his breakthrough framework. Everyone knows it's yours, but nobody's saying anything." The pattern became crystal clear when I discovered I'd been removed from our Slack leadership channel, not kicked out with a notification, just silently removed. Like I'd never existed. My direct reports started getting meeting invitations from Ethan for design consultation, bypassing me entirely. When I confronted him about it, he smiled that infuriating smile and said, "Just trying to maintain momentum while you figure out your next steps." My next steps? I kept my voice level, though my fists were clenched under my desk. "Well, Greg mentioned you might be exploring other opportunities, taking your opinions elsewhere, as it were." He actually used air quotes. "We want to make sure there's no knowledge loss when you transition out." The gaslighting was breathtaking. They were actively pushing me out while pretending I was already leaving, but the cruelest part was watching my team struggle. Marcus came to my office Friday afternoon, closing the door behind him. "Emily, what the hell is happening?" He slumped in the chair across from me, looking exhausted. "Ethan just told me all user research needs to go through him for approval. He rejected my study on enterprise dashboard usage because it doesn't include enough AI integration points, whatever that means." "It means Greg wants to justify his chatbot obsession," I said, pouring us both coffee from my personal machine, another small rebellion since Greg had removed all the good coffee from the kitchen to optimize spending. "This is insane. Half the team is looking for other jobs." Marcus rubbed his temples. "Zoe's already had 2 interviews with Microsoft. Rachel in Customer Success told me Brightline is asking questions about all these changes." That caught my attention. "What kind of questions?" "Monica Alvarez herself called asking why you weren't on the last quarterly review call." Rachel tried to cover, but Monica's not stupid. She knows something's wrong. I leaned back, processing this information. Monica Alvarez, CEO of Brightline Logistics, our biggest client, representing 40% of our revenue. She'd specifically requested me as the design lead on their account 3 years ago. The next week, the isolation tactics escalated. My parking spot, the one I'd earned after 5 years, was suddenly needed for visitor parking. My name disappeared from the company website's leadership page. The final insult came when I walked past conference room C and saw Ethan presenting my redesign to a group of stakeholders, with Greg nodding approvingly beside him. I stood in the doorway, watching Ethan butcher the explanation of the information architecture I'd spent months perfecting. He couldn't answer basic questions about user flow because he didn't understand the research behind it. One of the board members, Janet Powell, noticed me and raised an eyebrow. I just smiled and walked away. The breaking point came Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the stupid opinion incident. I received an email from HR, copying Greg and Ethan. Subject: Design Asset Transition. They wanted all my files, documentation, and project materials transferred to Ethan by end of week to ensure continuity of operations. I read it 3 times, each time my smile growing wider. They wanted my files? Sure. They'd get exactly what they were entitled to. Every file I'd created on company time, using company resources. But the redesign Greg had humiliated me over, the one I'd built at home on weekends using my personal Adobe license, that stayed with me. I began the meticulous process of separating my work. Company property went into clearly labeled folders. Personal projects, including the complete redesign with all its research documentation, user testing results, and implementation specifications, stayed on my personal drive. I'd been careful, obsessively so. Every line of code, every design element created on my own time had been documented as such. Wednesday morning, I overheard 2 junior developers in the break room. "Did you hear Emily's being managed out?" one whispered. "Greg told Ethan she's not aligned with the company's vision. They're just waiting for her to quit so they don't have to pay severance." The other one snorted. "Good luck with that. Emily's tougher than Greg thinks. My money's on her." I smiled as I poured my tea. They had no idea how right they were. Greg thought he was isolating me, cutting me off from power and influence. What he was actually doing was freeing me from any obligation to save him from his own incompetence. Every bridge he burned for me was one less reason to stay. That evening, alone in my office as the sun set over the Chicago skyline, I pulled out my personal laptop and opened a document I'd started the day after Greg's humiliation. At the top, in bold letters, Exit Strategy. Below it, a growing list of assets, allies, and opportunities. Greg Mason wanted me gone? Fine. But I wouldn't be leaving alone, and I certainly wouldn't be leaving quietly. That Thursday evening, I stayed late, waiting until the office emptied before pulling out my employment contract. I'd read it dozens of times over the years. But tonight I was looking for something specific. My finger traced down to Section 12, Intellectual Property Rights. The language was beautifully clear. Any work product created entirely outside of company hours, using personal equipment and resources without utilization of company confidential information, shall remain the sole property of the employee. Our legal team had included this clause to attract top talent who maintained side projects. They never imagined it would become my golden ticket. I opened my personal laptop and reviewed my meticulous documentation. Every single component of the redesign had been created on weekends and evenings. Timestamps from my personal Adobe Creative Cloud account showed work sessions starting at 8 p.m. on Fridays, continuing through Sunday nights. My Git commits from my personal repository told the same story. Even the user research had been conducted through my own SurveyMonkey account, paid for with my personal credit card. But I needed to be absolutely certain. I scheduled a consultation with Jennifer Walsh, an intellectual property attorney recommended by a friend. Friday afternoon. I sat in her downtown office, watching her review my documentation. "This is impressively thorough," Jennifer said, adjusting her glasses. "You've got timestamp evidence, payment records, even emails to yourself documenting when and where you worked on this. Did you plan this from the beginning?" "I've been in tech long enough to know that side projects need protection," I replied. "But honestly, I never thought I'd need to use it against my own company." Jennifer leaned back, tapping her pen against her notepad. "Based on what you've shown me, you have clear ownership. The redesign, the research, the implementation specs. It's all yours. Northwind has no claim to it." What if they try to argue it's derivative of my work there? They could try, but it would be a weak argument. You've been careful to create something transformative, not just iterative. Plus, this clause, she pointed to another section, specifically states that improvements to existing products made on personal time belong to the employee unless explicitly assigned to the company in writing. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. So if I wanted to take this design elsewhere, legally, you're free to do so. But Emily, Jennifer's expression turned serious. Be prepared for them to threaten litigation anyway. It's a common intimidation tactic. They might not have a case, but they could make your life difficult. They're already making my life difficult, I said, thinking of the past 2 weeks of isolation and humiliation. That evening, I began the delicate process of securing my assets. First, I backed up everything to multiple secure cloud services, my personal ones, not anything connected to Northwind. Then I systematically removed my personal work from the company systems, not deleted, that would look suspicious. Just moved to archive folders with innocuous names like old proposals and deprecated designs. The real masterstroke came when I reviewed the company's backup policy. Greg, in his cost-cutting fervor, had reduced automated backups from daily to weekly to save on storage costs. If I timed this right, my personal work would be gone before the next backup cycle, leaving no trace in the company's systems. Monday morning brought an unexpected gift. Ethan, in his arrogance, sent me an email. Emily, we need the source files for your redesign ASAP. Greg wants to present it to the board Thursday. No please, no thank you. Just a demand. I crafted my response carefully. Hi Ethan, I'd be happy to provide all company-owned design assets. However, the redesign you're referring to was developed entirely on my personal time using my personal resources. It's not company property. I've attached a zip file containing all designs created during company hours using company resources. Best, Emily. 20 minutes later, Greg stormed into my office, not bothering to knock. What the hell is this? He waved his phone at me, showing my email to Ethan. I remained seated, calm. It's the truth. That redesign was created entirely outside of work. Check my employment contract, Section 12. You created it for Northwind? No, I created it for the users of enterprise software. I presented it to Northwind, and you told me to take my stupid opinion elsewhere. So, that's what I'm doing. His face turned an alarming shade of red. You can't do this. I'll have legal bury you. You're welcome to try, I said, pulling out Jennifer's business card. Here's my attorney's contact information. She's already reviewed all my documentation and confirms I'm within my rights. Greg snatched the card, glaring at it like it might burst into flames. You think you're clever? Fine. But good luck getting another job in this industry when word gets out that you sabotaged your own company. Sabotage? I laughed. Actually laughed. Greg, I'm protecting my intellectual property. You want a redesign? Have Ethan create one. He's the senior director of product innovation. After all, he leaned over my desk, trying to intimidate me with his height. You're done here, Emily. I'll make sure of it. Are you firing me? I asked, pulling out my phone to record. Because I'd like that in writing. Or are you creating a hostile work environment to force me to quit? My attorney would love to hear about that too. He straightened up, his jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. Without another word, he stormed out, slamming my door so hard that my framed certificates rattled on the wall. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding but face serene. The battle lines were drawn. Greg thought he held all the cards, the position, the CEO's ear, the power to isolate me. But he'd forgotten the most important rule of corporate warfare. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The call came Wednesday evening, just as I was packing up my office belongings into boxes. Not because I'd been fired, but because I knew it was only a matter of time. The name on my phone screen made me smile. Clara Hughes. Emily, I heard through the grapevine that Northwind might not be appreciating your talents properly these days. Clara's voice was warm but direct, just as I remembered. Clara had been Northwind's creative director until 18 months ago, when Greg's predecessor had passed her over for the VP role she'd earned. She'd left for Evercrest Systems, Northwind's biggest competitor. And from what I'd heard, she was thriving as their chief design officer. News travels fast, I said, closing my office door for privacy. In Chicago tech circles? Please. Greg Mason's scorched earth management style is all anyone talks about at happy hours. But listen, I'm not calling to gossip. I'm calling to make you an offer. My pulse quickened. I'm listening. Can you meet me tomorrow? Breakfast at the Fairmont, 8 a.m. And Emily, bring that redesign everyone's whispering about. The next morning, I arrived at the Fairmont's restaurant to find Clara already waiting, looking polished and confident in a way that reminded me why I'd always admired her. She stood to hug me, then got straight to business. I'll cut to the chase, Clara said after we'd ordered. Evercrest is launching a major platform overhaul. We've got the engineering talent, the funding, and the market position. What we don't have is a design vision that will differentiate us from Northwind. But something tells me you might have exactly what we need. I pulled out my laptop, angling it so only Clara could see the screen. For the next 30 minutes, I walked her through every aspect of the redesign: the user research, the information architecture, the innovative workflow solutions that addressed every pain point our enterprise clients faced. Clara's eyes lit up. This is brilliant, Emily. It's exactly what Monica Alvarez has been asking for. I nearly choked on my coffee. Monica? From Brightline? Oh, didn't you know? She's been in talks with us for months. Their contract with Northwind is up for renewal in 4 months, and she's not happy. Apparently, some new AI feature crashed during a demo and lost critical data. She's shopping around. My mind raced. This was bigger than I'd imagined. Clara, I need to be clear about something. This design is my personal intellectual property. I own it completely. Developed it on my own time. I assumed as much, knowing how careful you are. Clara pulled out a folder. Here's what I'm proposing. Director of Product Design role. Reporting directly to me. 20% salary increase from your current rate, full benefits, equity package, and, this is the interesting part, we'll purchase the exclusive rights to your design for a 6-figure sum. Separate from your salary. I stared at the number she'd written down. It was more than fair. It was generous. There's more, Clara continued. I want you to build your own team. Bring your best people from Northwind if they're interested. We'll match or exceed their current compensation. You want me to poach from Northwind? I want you to rescue talented people from a sinking ship. There's a difference. Clara's smile was sharp. Besides, non-competes in Illinois are nearly impossible to enforce for employees below executive level. We've had our legal team verify this. She was right. I thought of Marcus, frustrated and demoralized. Zoe, already interviewing elsewhere. Rachel from Customer Success, who understood our clients better than anyone. What about Brightline specifically? I asked. Clara leaned forward. If we can demonstrate that we have the design solution they need, combined with the team that understands their requirements, Monica would sign with us in a heartbeat. She's already told me as much, off the record. She just needs to see that we can deliver what Northwind promised but failed to provide. And you think my design is the key? I know it is. Monica specifically mentioned wanting the exact improvements your design provides. It's like you read her mind, or more likely, you actually listen to user feedback, unlike Greg's team. We spent the next hour discussing details. Start date in 2 weeks. Signing bonus to cover any gap in employment. Full remote work flexibility. Even a dedicated budget for user research. The very thing Greg had gutted at Northwind. One condition, I said. I wanted in writing that any team members I bring over are protected from retaliation lawsuits. Northwind might come after me, but I won't let my people suffer for following me. Done, Clara said without hesitation. We'll indemnify anyone you bring over, Emily. I've been where you are. I know what it's like to watch incompetent leadership destroy something you've built. But this? This is your chance to build something even better. That afternoon, I sat in my car in Northwind's parking lot, holding Evercrest's offer letter. The smart move would be to accept immediately, to get out before Greg could do more damage. But I thought about my team, about the culture we'd built, about the clients who trusted us. No, I wouldn't just leave. I'd execute a strategic exit that would protect my people and show Greg Mason exactly what happened when you told someone to take their stupid opinion elsewhere. I texted Clara, "I'm in, but I need 2 weeks to tie up loose ends." Her response was immediate, "Take all the time you need." Oh, and Emily? Monica Alvarez asked if you'd be interested in having lunch next week. Unofficially, of course. I smiled. Greg thought he'd won by pushing me out. He had no idea that he'd just handed his biggest competitor the keys to his kingdom. And the best part? It was all perfectly legal, perfectly ethical, and perfectly deserved. The demo disaster happened Thursday afternoon, and I watched it unfold from the hallway outside Conference Room A. Through the glass walls, I could see Greg and Ethan presenting to Monica Alvarez and 3 other Brightline executives. The new AI-powered feature was supposed to be the crown jewel that would lock in Brightline's contract renewal. Ethan clicked confidently through the interface, boasting about the revolutionary predictive analytics they'd rushed to implement. "Watch this," he said, initiating a data import from Brightline's test environment. "Our AI will automatically optimize your workflow patterns and..." The screen froze. Then error messages cascaded across the display like a digital avalanche. The system hadn't just crashed, it had corrupted the test data during the import process. Monica's face went from interested to concerned to absolutely furious in the span of 10 seconds. "Are you telling me," Monica said, her voice deadly calm, "that your revolutionary feature just destroyed 3 months of test data?" Greg scrambled to salvage the situation, throwing out phrases like minor bug and edge case, but the damage was done. Monica stood up, gathering her materials. "We'll be reevaluating our options," she said curtly, then walked out. She nearly collided with me in the hallway. Our eyes met, and something passed between us. Recognition, understanding. "Emily," she said quietly, "do you have a minute?" We found a quiet corner in the lobby. Monica looked exhausted. "Please tell me that disaster in there wasn't your work." "My redesign was killed 2 weeks ago," I said carefully. "What you just saw was Greg and Ethan's innovation." Monica rubbed her temples. "Emily, I'll be straight with you. Brightline has been with Northwind because of the team you built and the products you designed. But this new direction? It's not working for us. That test data they just corrupted? It was our audit preparation system. We needed that for compliance reviews next month." "I'm sorry, Monica. I wish I could help. But can you?" She looked at me intently. "Not here, obviously, but somewhere else. Because if you're designing solutions somewhere else, I need to know about it." I chose my words carefully. "I can't discuss specifics, but I might have something that addresses exactly the challenges Brightline faces. Enterprise-focused, stability first, with intelligent features that enhance rather than replace human decision-making." "When can you show me?" 2 weeks, different venue, full demonstration of a working solution. Monica pulled out her business card, writing her personal cell on the back. "Call me. And Emily, that design you presented 2 weeks ago, the one Greg dismissed, that's exactly what we've been asking for. If you can deliver that elsewhere." She didn't need to finish. We both understood. That evening, I started my recruitment campaign. First was Marcus. I found him in his cubicle at 7 p.m., still trying to salvage user research that Ethan had mangled. "How would you like to run a proper research department again?" I asked, closing his cubicle door behind me. He looked up, eyes red with frustration. "Emily, what are you talking about?" I told him about Evercrest, about Clara's offer, about the budget and autonomy we'd have. Full research capabilities, Marcus, actual user testing labs, a CEO who understands that data drives design. But my non-compete doesn't exist. You're not executive level. Illinois courts won't enforce it. I've had it verified by legal counsel. Marcus leaned back, processing. When? 2 weeks, same compensation plus 10%, full benefits, signing bonus. I'm in, he said without hesitation. This place is killing my soul. Next was Zoe. I found her at the coffee shop across the street, sketching interface designs in her notebook, designs for her Microsoft interview. I realized. Cancel your Microsoft interview, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. She looked up, startled. Emily, how did you? Because I know you. And because Microsoft would waste your talent in some massive team where you'd be designing icons for 2 years. Come with me to Evercrest, lead designer role, direct report to me, 30% raise. Her eyes widened. Lead designer. But I've only been in the industry for 3 years of exceptional work. You understand enterprise design better than people with decades of experience. Greg doesn't see it, but Clara Hughes does. Zoe's notebook slowly closed. This is real. As real as that disaster of a demo this afternoon. Which, by the way, wouldn't have happened if they'd listened to your warnings about data validation. When Greg finds out, what's he going to do? Fire us? He's already pushed us out. This is just making it official. Finally, Rachel from Customer Success. She was harder to convince, having been with Northwind for 8 years. But when I mentioned Monica Alvarez's reaction to the demo, her resolve crumbled. Monica called me an hour ago, Rachel admitted. She wanted to know if the entire company had lost its mind. I couldn't even defend what happened. Emily, I've spent years building these client relationships. I can't watch Greg destroy them. Then don't. Come with us. Bring your expertise to a company that values it. By Friday evening, I had my core team ready to jump ship. But the masterstroke came when Janet Powell, the board member who'd witnessed Ethan stealing my presentation, called me. Emily, I heard you're exploring other opportunities, she said carefully. News travels, I replied, equally careful. Indeed. I also heard that Brightline is reconsidering their contract. Would it be inappropriate if I mentioned that several board members have concerns about recent personnel decisions? I smiled. Janet, I can't speak to board matters, but I can say that talent and clients tend to go where they're valued. Understood. Best of luck, Emily. Something tells me Northwind is about to learn an expensive lesson about the cost of arrogance. The next 2 weeks required surgical precision. I'd accepted Evercrest's offer, but strategically set my start date for exactly 14 days out, enough time to execute a coordinated exit that would maximize impact. Every move had to be perfectly timed. I spent the first week documenting everything meticulously. Every project I'd touched, every process I'd established, every client relationship I'd built, all compiled into comprehensive handover documents. I wanted no one to claim later that I'd sabotaged anything through negligence. If Northwind failed, it would be entirely due to Greg's incompetence, not my departure. Meanwhile, I quietly coordinated with my recruited team. We agreed to submit our resignations simultaneously, Friday afternoon at 4 p.m., too late for Greg to implement damage control before the weekend. Marcus had already begun transferring his personal research files. Zoe discreetly removed her design tools from her workstation. Rachel prepared detailed transition notes for her accounts, though we both knew Greg wouldn't read them. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected development. Greg called an all-hands meeting to announce his revolutionary restructuring. He stood at the podium, projecting supreme confidence as he outlined plans to eliminate redundancies and optimize human capital. Translation: more layoffs were coming. Starting Monday, we're implementing a new performance framework, he announced. Anyone not aligned with our AI-first vision will be transitioned out. This company is moving forward, with or without legacy thinking. Several people glanced at me. Everyone knew legacy thinking was Greg's code for my user-centered approach. He was practically announcing my termination without saying it directly. Liam from back-end engineering caught me after the meeting. Emily, is it true you're leaving? I looked at this brilliant engineer who'd built our entire authentication system. Liam, have you ever considered that your talents might be better appreciated elsewhere? His eyes widened with understanding. Are you recruiting? I'm suggesting that talented people should be where they're valued. Evercrest values engineering excellence. By Thursday, 2 more engineers had quietly agreed to follow me. The exodus was growing beyond my original plan. But these were people Greg had marginalized, dismissed, or ignored. They deserved better. Friday morning. I put the finishing touches on my resignation letter. It was professional, brief, and contained one critical paragraph. Please note that all intellectual property developed on my personal time using personal resources remains my sole property. As specified in Section 12 of my employment contract, this includes the comprehensive platform redesign presented on March 15th, which was explicitly developed outside of company hours. At 3:55 p.m., I walked into Greg's office. He was on a call, boasting to someone about the dead weight he was cutting from the organization. I waited until he hung up. Emily, what do you want? I placed the resignation letter on his desk. I'm taking my stupid opinion elsewhere. Greg, exactly as you suggested. He grabbed the letter, scanning it quickly. His face went from smug to confused to alarmed as he reached the intellectual property paragraph. You can't do this, he said, standing up. We have a major board presentation Monday. The Brightline contract is up for renewal in 3 months, I finished. I'm sure Ethan can handle it. After all, he's been presenting my work as his own for 2 weeks now. This is sabotage. You're trying to destroy this company. No, Greg, I'm leaving a company that told me my expertise was worthless. That's not sabotage, it's self-respect. My phone buzzed. Messages from Marcus, Zoe, Rachel, Liam, and 2 others. Delivered. Greg's phone started ringing. Then his computer began pinging with email notifications. His face went pale as he realized what was happening. You coordinated this, he accused. I offered talented people a better opportunity. Free market capitalism at its finest. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, one more thing. Monica Alvarez asked me to pass along a message. Brightline will be evaluating all vendor relationships over the next month. She seemed particularly interested in platforms that don't corrupt data during demos. You talk to our clients? That's a violation of... Monica approached me personally. We discussed design philosophy and industry trends. Nothing confidential, nothing inappropriate, though she did mention being impressed by a certain redesign that addresses all of Brightline's pain points. Shame Northwind doesn't own that design, isn't it? I walked out of his office for the last time, passing Sharon at her desk. She gave me the tiniest smile and a subtle thumbs up. Even Greg's own assistant knew he'd brought this on himself. As I packed the last of my belongings, my phone rang. Clara Hughes. Emily. I just got resignation letters from 7 Northwind employees, all requesting to join your team at Evercrest. Should I be expecting more? That's all for now, I said, looking around my empty office one last time. But Clara, you might want to prepare for a significant client acquisition in about 3 months. Brightline? I couldn't possibly comment on that, but I did promise Monica Alvarez a demonstration of our new platform in 2 weeks. Clara laughed. Emily Carter, you're even more strategic than I remembered. Welcome to Evercrest. Something tells me Greg Mason is about to learn what happens when you tell genuine talent to take their opinions elsewhere. As I walked out of Northwind's building, box in hand, I saw several of my recruited team members doing the same. We'd planned nothing for this moment, but somehow we all converged in the lobby. Marcus raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. To stupid opinions, he said with a grin. To taking them elsewhere, Zoe added. We walked out together into the Chicago afternoon, leaving Greg to explain to the board on Monday how he'd lost a third of his design and engineering talent in a single afternoon. The best part? We hadn't violated a single policy, broken any laws, or done anything unethical. We'd simply taken his advice. 2 weeks later, I stood in Evercrest's gleaming conference room, watching my team set up for the most important presentation of our careers. The Chicago skyline stretched out behind floor-to-ceiling windows, and at the massive oak table sat Monica Alvarez and her executive team from Brightline Logistics. But this wasn't just any demo. Clara had made sure of that. Also present were 3 other major enterprise clients, all curious about Evercrest's new design direction. Word had traveled fast about Northwind's mass exodus, and everyone wanted to see what we'd built. Monica, everyone, thank you for coming, I began, feeling the familiar confidence that came from knowing you had something exceptional to share. What you're about to see isn't just a redesign. It's a complete reimagining of how enterprise software should work, built from 6 months of intensive user research and real-world feedback. For the next hour, I walked them through every aspect of the platform, the interface that reduced task completion time by 60%, the workflow automation that eliminated repetitive processes without removing human oversight, the data validation system that made corruption errors like Northwind's recent disaster impossible. Marcus presented his research findings, showing heat maps and user journey analyses that proved every design decision. Zoe demonstrated the responsive architecture that adapted seamlessly across devices. Rachel outlined the customer success framework that would ensure smooth transitions and ongoing support. Monica leaned forward when we reached the section about data integrity. This validation system, it would have prevented what happened at Northwind? It would have made it impossible, I confirmed. Every data transaction has multiple checkpoint verifications. No single process can corrupt an entire dataset. And if any anomaly is detected, the system creates automatic backups before proceeding. This is exactly what we've been asking for, Monica said, looking at her team. They were all nodding. How soon could we implement? Clara stepped in. With Emily's team leading the transition, we could have you migrated within 90 days. Full support, no data loss, and seamless integration with your existing systems. The room went quiet as Monica exchanged glances with her executives. Then she smiled. Where do we sign? But the meeting wasn't over. One of the other executives, Thomas Chen from Meridian Industries, raised his hand. Ms. Carter, we've been Northwind clients for 5 years. Can you guarantee this level of innovation will continue? Mr. Chen, innovation isn't about chasing trends or forcing AI into everything, I replied. It's about listening to users, understanding their needs, and building solutions that make their work easier and more efficient. That's not just my philosophy. It's Evercrest's commitment, Clara added. We've given Emily full autonomy to build and lead her team. The talent that created this will be the talent that continues to evolve it. 2 hours later, we had letters of intent from all 4 companies. The combined contracts were worth $40 million annually, with Brightlines alone representing $18 million. Monica pulled me aside as they were leaving. Emily, I heard about what happened at Northwind. Greg Mason's an idiot. She paused, then smiled. Though I suppose I should thank him. If he hadn't told you to take your opinion elsewhere, we'd still be stuck with his AI nonsense. That evening, our new team celebrated at a rooftop bar overlooking the city. Clara raised her champagne glass. To Emily, who turned corporate stupidity into competitive advantage. To the team, I corrected, looking at each person who'd trusted me enough to make this leap. And to Greg Mason, who gave us the push we needed. Marcus laughed. I heard through the grapevine that the board called an emergency meeting when Brightline announced they weren't renewing. Zoe checked her phone. Oh my God, look at this. She showed us a LinkedIn post from a Northwind employee. CEO just announced Greg Mason is pursuing other opportunities, lasted exactly 8 months. I felt a moment of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. This had never really been about revenge. It had been about respect. Greg had tried to diminish my value, to make me feel small and irrelevant. Instead, he'd freed me to prove exactly how much that value was worth. Rachel pulled up Northwind's stock price. Down 12% since Monday. What about Evercrest? Liam asked. Up 8% on news of the Brightline acquisition, Clara said, grinning. The board is ecstatic. They're already approved expanding Emily's team by another 15 people. As I stood there, surrounded by talented people who'd believed in my vision enough to risk everything. I thought about that moment 3 weeks ago when Greg had humiliated me in front of everyone. Take your stupid opinion elsewhere, he'd said. I smiled, raising my own glass. You know what? Greg was right about one thing. I did need to take my opinion elsewhere. I just don't think he expected me to take half his talent, his biggest client, and his job security with me. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the skyline in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere in this city, Greg Mason was probably updating his resume, trying to explain to recruiters how he'd lost everything in less than a month. He'd probably blame everyone but himself, claim it was sabotage, betrayal, bad luck. But I knew the truth, and so did everyone who mattered. When you tell talented people their opinions are stupid, when you dismiss expertise and experience in favor of ego and buzzwords, when you create a culture of fear instead of innovation, you don't get to act surprised when those people take their talents somewhere they're valued. The best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a resignation letter, a better offer, and the sound of your biggest client signing with your competition. Greg had told me to take my stupid opinion elsewhere, so I did. And it turned out my stupid opinion was worth $40 million a year to someone who was smart enough to listen. Thank you so much for listening to this story of sweet corporate revenge. I hope Emily's journey reminded you that your value doesn't diminish just because someone fails to see it. Where are you listening to this story from? I'd love to hear in the comments below. Whether you're commuting in New York, taking a break in London, or winding down for the evening in Tokyo. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this tale, and share your own thoughts about standing up for your worth in the workplace. Have you ever had a boss who underestimated you? Let's discuss in the comments.